Well, Seeds of Tomorrow, Solutions for Improving Our Children's Education, is about educational policy, but it's written primarily for parents and teachers as well. And what the book does is attempt to bridge the divide between educational policy and the real lives of our children. I've been fortunate to be able to work in multiple capacities in the educational field, student, teacher, parent also, and administrator and policy advisor. What I've discovered in those council meetings and those committee rooms and those board meetings is that the conversations are very different than the conversations that are happening on the playgrounds and the soccer fields and in the school parking lots. I often ask, what does this policy mean for our children? What's this going to look like in the lives of our young people? And often those answers are very different than the concerns that we have as parents that are about school lunches and recess and class sizes, things like course offerings and enrichment programs and after-school opportunities. So this book really is intended to bridge that divide between the abstract world of educational policy and the concrete lives of our children. One of the premises of the book is a real challenge to standardization, because we have taken this path in terms of improving our public schools around the notion of we want every child to be thinking and learning and demonstrating that learning in the exact same fashion. And the problem with that is that we are now in a global economy and democracy, and all of those factors require not standardization, but in fact flexibility, adaptability, innovation, creativity. And so if we are successful at the current goals in education of standardizing children, we are going to graduate an entire workforce with the exact same ability and the exact same skill set, and they will be ill-prepared to be successful in this changing world. There's a tremendous misconception about parents who oppose standardized testing. And what in actuality we're asking for is not less, but more. More opportunities for children to learn, more personal involvement from parents and teachers, more dollars directed at instructional resources, and more ways for children to demonstrate their thinking processes and unique abilities. We all agree that children need to learn how to read and need to learn how to write and solve mathematical problems. Where we disagree is whether shaded bubbles and the letter C is a proper indicator of that. We have the illusion of accountability, and so what we've done is really shifted accountability over to an agency that has the authority but shares in none of the responsibility for improving those schools or educating America's children. And the other challenge is that the amount of resources that are being directed at those monitoring systems is taking time and money away from the areas that have in the past been proven to improve student achievement. So for example, resources that were once dedicated to helping students in terms of life skills or college readiness are now being directed at preparing those students to perform on a test that upon graduation they're never going to see again. Well, there's a section in the chapter of choices, and I remember when I first was looking for a school for my daughter Grace, and you know, I'm no different than any other parent. I wanted my kids in the best school, and so I began the process of looking at all the schools in the area, and then I went about interviewing the teachers. And what I learned came as a real surprise for me, because so often parents would say, oh, you've got to go to this school, this is the best school, or you've got to go over here because this is the best school. And in that process I realized that as parents we all have very different values for our children and who it is that we want them to become and what we want for their lives. And it doesn't look the same. And so a school that fits the need for this family and these parents and this child isn't necessarily going to be the right school for another family and child. And yet the entire goal in education is the one-size-fits-all approach, where we want every school looking identically. And that's just not in alignment with how we think as parents and what we value about our children. In terms of challenges to education, they're the same. They've been the same. They haven't changed. We certainly have great schools in areas. What we have, however, are enormous inequities. And we're finding that those children in areas of high poverty are not given the same opportunities that, that children in higher income areas are getting. And so what we've done with No Child Left Behind and Goals 2000 is we've said we want equality and expectations, but this is a country that still has not been able to deliver in terms of equality and opportunities. That's the challenge before, and that remains to be the challenge today. The book, Solutions, is, I'm not going to give it away because then why would you go out and buy the book? So, but I think that the solutions will offer some surprises. The last chapter is directed at teachers, parents, students, school administrators, and policymakers. And it's not prescriptive. I mean, the book does not attempt to apply a uniform solution as politicians and policymakers have in the past. I don't know what the answer is or what's needed in terms of improving a high school in Los Angeles. And I don't know what's going to be the best answers in terms of improving the quality of learning and the culture of the classroom in Louisville, Kentucky. But I can tell you with absolute certainty that it's not the same thing. Well, when No Child Left Behind was passed in 2002, my daughter was just entering kindergarten. This fall she began middle school. And so our children can't afford for us not to get this right. I agree that change may begin with conversations, but ultimately if we're going to change the course of educational policy, it's going to mean different actions on the part of parents and teachers. Seeds of Tomorrow is written in the vein of possibility. How can we begin to adopt policies that work for our schools, that support teachers and education, but that also make sense for our children?